Hello everyone. I'm Fazlu Rahman. I'm a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Astrophysics, Bangalore, in India. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present my work on the multi-frequency statistics of galactic synchrotron emission. So this work is done with my supervisor, Pravapati Chandra from IAA, and my collaborator, Tuhin Ghosh from NICER, Bhubaneswar. So let me begin with galactic emissions. We know that there are various galactic components which are causing challenges for CMB experiments, like synchrotron emission, thermal dust emission, free emission, and spinning dust emission. And the plots that I've shown here, so this have been shown these days in the meeting here multiple times. So I'm not going into the details, but we know that synchrotron thermal dust is going to pose severe challenge for the detection of beam offset. So in short, it's important that the accurate modeling of galactic emissions is crucial to capture the tiny signals from the early universe. So since my talk is on galactic synchrotron, so let me give you a brief description. So we know that relativistic electrons and protons in the cosmic rays, when they interact with the galactic magnetic field, it emits synchrotron radiation and it will be highly polarized. So I'm not going into the details, but I would like to show the whole sky temperature maps. Let's say given by Haslam, which is a direct observation at 408 megahertz, and we have the WMAP component separated synchrotron map, and we also have the Planck component separated map that I've shown here, which is obtained using the Kamater technique. Okay, so we know since it's a very highly nonlinear field, we do not expect the synchrotron emission to be Gaussian. However, it's a well-known assumption that galactic synchrotron models used in CMB experiments are based on the assumption that the fluctuations are Gaussian and statistically isotropic at small scales. So the question that we would like to ask in this talk is, are these approximations valid, or to what extent they are valid? So for example, there have been various studies to check this approximation. Let's say with Ben David et al., Ron et al. In 2018, they studied the bispectrum skewness and kurtosis of the field, and they found that if you go to small scales, the field is getting Gaussian. However, given the nonlinear and non-Gaussian origin of the galactic synchrotron, analysis with 3 and 4 point correlations is not complete. So this brings us to the notion of understanding the morphological features of synchrotron emission, so which is going to be the prime focus of my talk today. So in this work, we would like to study the morphological statistics of synchrotron temperature maps, Haslam, WMAP, and Planck. So, and we use the morphological tools such as scalar and tensor Minkowski functionals. So I will give a brief review of Minkowski functionals. So Minkowski functionals, it contains, unlike power spectrum, bispectrum, etc., it contains all the endpoint correlation information. And since we don't know the exact nature of the foreground field like synchrotron, these tools are going to be very ideal in understanding the statistics of the field. So let me summarize the main goals of this work. So first of all, we would like to carry out a detailed analysis of Haslam synchrotron map, and then we check the validity of the approximation of Gaussianity and statistical isotropy in small scales. Secondly, I would like to examine the properties of Planck and WMAP component separated synchrotron maps and see how well they are consistent with each other and with the Haslam map. So before going to the analysis, let me give a brief idea about what are Minkowski functionals. So Minkowski functionals are the morphological tools which can be used to study the statistics of any random field, and it's widely used in cosmology and various other aspects of astrophysics. So it is computed on a escalation set or a level set of a field. So on the right side, I have given a few maps to explain what a escalation set is given a random field. So we can divide the field into binary fields in such a way that there will be a particular threshold, we will have yellow regions and black regions. So at different thresholds, we will get different structures. And what Minkowski functional will look at is it will probe the geometry and count of this connected region, which is there in the yellow color, and the holes, which is in the black color. So we have the quantities at each escalation set, and the main advantage of Minkowski functional is that it is a real scale statistics, and it contains the information of all the higher order correlations, which I explained before. in Minkowski functionals, there are again divisions. So there are the widely used scalar Minkowski functionals. So 3 scalar Minkowski functionals in 2D are area fraction, which is denoted by V0, contour length, and genus. Also, we have Betti numbers. So Betti numbers are defined. Betti numbers are basically the number of structures, which I denoted here as the connected number of connected region and the number of holes. And genus is basically the difference between the number of connected regions and holes. Now, how these scalar Minkowski functions are useful in understanding the statistics, let's say the non-Gaussianity of the field. So for a Gaussian random field, it's well known that it's analytically known that how the Minkowski functionals behave. Let's say for V0 for a Gaussian random field, it's going to be a complementary error function. For V1, it is going to be a Gaussian function, and V2 it is going to be a H1 Hermite polynomial. So this is across the threshold. So this is all about the scalar Minkowski functionals. Now, in this work, we have also employed tensor Minkowski functional, particularly one of the tensor Minkowski functional called contour Minkowski tensor. So contour Minkowski tensor, it's defined like this. So mathematically, we express it as it's a tensor product of the tangent vector for a particular structure. So given a structure, yellow structure like this, so the tangent vector is here. So this is going to be an integral over the tensor product of the tangent vectors. So, so why we have taken this particular contour Minkowski tensor is that, so this is, so these are rotationally and translationally invariant. One more thing I would like to say here is that, so this, since it's 2D and it's a 2x2, it's a second rank tensor, this is going to be a 2x2 matrix, and the trace of this W1 2x2 matrix will give us the V1, which is the second scalar Minkowski tensor, Minkowski functional. So what extra information that we have in contour Minkowski tensor? So since it's a tensor, we have extra information, and CMT encodes the information of the anisotropy and alignment of the structures. So basically it contains the directional information. So from the contour Minkowski tensor, which is denoted as W1, we can compute the eigenvalues of this W1 for each individual structures that I have shown here. So these eigenvalues are lambda 1 and lambda 2, and if you take the ratio of this lambda 1 and lambda 2, which is a quantity called beta. So this beta contains information about the anisotropy of the connected region on whole. So let's say for a circle or any other symmetric structure, this is going to be 1. And if there is any deviation from this from the isotropy, then that will be indicated by the value of beta, which will be less than 1. So beta is defined in such a way that the value will always lie between 0 and 1. So another important quantity that we can calculate from this contour Minkowski tensor is a quantity called alpha. So alpha is computed like this. So we have different structures on the sky, and we can compute the W1 for each individual structure, and then we can average over the entire sky, and then we take the eigenvalue of the average W1. So this average W1, its eigenvalues, its ratio is what is the alpha. So what is the information encoded in alpha? So alpha contains the information about the statistical anisotropy of the random field. So alpha is equal to 1. It implies that the field is statistically isotropic. And again, alpha is defined in such a way that the value comes between 0 and 1. And the deviation from 1 indicates that the overall anisotropy of the field is there. So, so the details are given in these papers. So if you're interested, you can check them. So we are basically using these tools to understand the morphology of the galactic synchrotron emission. So let me begin with the Haslam map. So the analysis of the Haslam map. So on the right side, I have shown the 2015 cleaned Haslam map given by Matthew Ramazé et al. And so in order to do the analysis, we have taken some pre-processing steps. So first thing is that we have applied a mask, so which basically masks the central galactic plane as well as bright emitting regions. So I have parameter ucut. So this ucut parameter quantifies how much masking is being carried out. So let's say ucut 60 Kelvin is basically 60 Kelvin is the threshold range that we have chosen for emitting the high emitting regions. So UCAT 60 mask is shown here and UCAT 25 mask is shown here. Also, we have applied bandpass filter. Since our interest is basically to understand the features of the emission at small scales, we have used a bandpass filter to capture the small scale features. And to quantify the non-Gaussian deviations and anisotropic features, so we have also generated 1000 Gaussian isotropic simulations from the power spectrum of the Hassler map. So the results I'm going to explain here about the Hassler map is already published in this paper. So if you're interested, you can check that. Okay, so what we have done is we have computed the 3 scalar Minkowski functionals for the Hassler synchrotron map at various masking and at various bandpassing scales. So on the right side, I have shown here the 3 scalar Minkowski functionals V0, V1, and V2 for both data, Hassler data, as well as the Gaussian isotropic simulations. So you can see that this scatter plot is deviating from the Gaussian isotropic simulation for both LCAT. For both the UCAT 60 Kelvin masking and UCAT 25 Kelvin masking. So we find that the synchrotron field is small scales is non-Gaussian. Okay, but visually looking at these plots, it's not very easy. So because of that, to understand how much deviation, non-Gaussian deviation is there, so we defined a quantity called delta Vk, which is the difference between the Minkowski functional for the data and the Gaussian isotropic simulations. So why this delta Vk is interesting? It's because of the fact that it can give 2 important information. So one thing is that, as it is evident, the amplitude of delta Vk, it contains the information about the amount of non-Gaussianity, how much non-Gaussian the field is. Another interesting thing is that the shape of this delta Vk, it can give us the information about the nature of non-Gaussianity, which I will explain in a few minutes. So let me go through this plot here. So what I've shown here is the delta V0, delta V1, and delta V2. So for the red plot that I'm showing is UCAT equal to 60, which is less masking, and UCAT equal to 25, which is like more masking. So the takeaway message from here is that if you're doing more and more masking, if you're moving away from the galactic region, the field is getting more and more Gaussian. So which is evident from this, that the amplitude of the delta Vks are falling for all the 3 scalar Minkowski functionals. Okay, second thing is about the scales. So I've computed the scalar Minkowski functional delta Vk for 3 different scales. So LCAT 50, LCAT 70, and LCAT 90, which are denoted by 3 different lines here. So we find that if you go to small scale, the smallest scale is here, it is LCAT equal to 90. So at the smallest scale, we are finding that the amount of non-Gaussianity, the strength of non-Gaussianity, it is decreasing. So as it was shown in the previous papers, so by Rana et al. And Bentover et al., it's evident that it is falling if you go to small scales. So, however, we probed the smallest scale that is possible with Hassler, given the resolution of the Hassler map, LCAT equal to 120, and we found that chi-square for V0 is 3.3 sigma, which is still significantly non-Gaussian. So now I will come to the interesting thing about the shape of the delta. Okay, so how it is going to be interesting is in the fact that, so we can see that there is a particular trend in the shape for delta V0, delta V1, and delta V2. So this is not a trivial thing. So we find that if we compare it with the shape of delta Vk for, let's say, local time non-Gaussianity, GNL, FNL, etc. So for a GNL value of 10 power 6, it is shown by Matsubara and Hikage that the delta V0, delta V1, and delta V2 have a shape that looks like the Hermite polynomial H1, H2, and H3. So now if you compare this result for a local type CMT non-Gaussianity with the plots that we have obtained for the Hassler, we find that there is a similar shape. So this could indicate that the non-Gaussianity of Hassler map at small scale, it could be of a GNL kind of non-Gaussianity. So in order to confirm the result, we simply computed the skewness and kurtosis of the Hassler field, and we found that the kurtosis parameters of the Hassler field is very large comparing to the skewness parameters. So this gives us a hint that, okay, the non-Gaussianity of the Hassler field is at small scales is going to be of kurtosis type. Okay, so if we do that, then the next thing that we have done is, so for GNL kind of local type non-Gaussianity, so there there are actually analytical expressions for the Minkowski functionals and delta Minkowski functional based on the perturbation theory. So here we can see that how the perturbation theory can be applied to the Minkowski functional in such a way that the Minkowski functional for a random mildly non-Gaussian field can be expanded in terms of a Gaussian field plus a first order term and a second order term. So what we did is, one more thing I would like to stress is that the first order term and the second order term, they contain the skewness parameters and the kurtosis parameters of the field. So what we did is we tried to compute the skewness and kurtosis parameter and compare the perturbation theory expressions with what we have obtained. So we find that if we are using the UCAT 60 mask, the results are not well matching with the perturbation theory one. So the perturbation theory is denoted with the dotted line as well as dashed line, and the total one is the proper line. So we find that at UCAT 60, there is a mismatch in amplitude, but the shape is matching. However, if you go to polar regions like UCAT 30 Kelvin as well as UCAT 25, we find that the perturbation theory that we use for CMP kind of analysis is working well in the cooler regions of the Haslam map at all the scales probed here. So we find that there is a match for the perturbation theory with the delta Minkowski functions that we have obtained here. So another thing that we have done is about the statistical isotropy. So we computed the alpha quantity that I have explained earlier for the Haslam field. Also in the right side, I have shown here the alpha obtained for data as well as simulation for two different masks. So the red again implies UCAT 60 and green implies UCAT 25, and the scatter plot is the one for data, and those are the error bars for the simulations. So we find that synchrotron field is anisotropic because it's moving away from the isotropic simulation. However, if you are removing the galactic region, the green one is getting more and more isotropic. Okay, so again, to make the things clear, we have computed delta alpha, which is the deviation or the difference between the alpha computed for data and the simulation. So we find that delta alpha for a green one, which is the more masking, I mean, moving away from galactic plane, the delta alpha is going to be smaller comparing to the red one. And we also find that the field is statistically isotropic at small scales, for basically mainly for the green ones, which is UCAT 25. Okay, so the takeaways that I would like to share with you from the Haslam analysis is that at the Haslam resolution, the level of non-Gaussianity is not low enough to model as Gaussian fluctuations. So we need high resolution synchrotron maps to go at further small scales. The second point is that the kurtosis nature of non-Gaussianity highlights the importance of morphological tools in scanning residuals in cleaned maps. So for example, if we just use bispectrum, so that may not be sufficient. We have to go beyond bispectrum if the nature is truly of kurtosis type. Third major point is that the validity of perturbation theory in the cooler regions of the Haslam field, it's going to be a useful input for the synchrotron modeling in those scales. Okay, now I would like to come to the WMAP and the Planck synchrotron analysis, which is an ongoing work. So I would like to share the major results that we have obtained so far. So what basically we are going to check is how consistent they are with the Haslam map. So there are two things here. So WMAP and Planck synchrotron maps that we are using here, these are the component separated products. So basically the features that we are seeing, it could be because it could be the residual, or it could be because of the component separation technique used, or it could be because of the different frequency in which WMAP and Planck maps are observing. So here, apart from the scalar Minkowski functionals, we are also using two extra quantities. One is the Betti numbers. So Betti numbers, as I have introduced earlier, these are the quantities which basically counts the number of structures, the yellow connected region, and the number of holes. Also, we have the beta. The beta computed for the connected region and the holes. Apart from that, we have alpha, which is the statistical anisotropy parameter. So we have computed all these morphological statistics for Haslam, WMAP, and Planck maps. Also, we have used, so for this analysis, we have used a mask given, shown here. So also we have used a filament mask given by Vidal et al. So okay, let me go to the results that we have obtained. So we find that, okay, similar to what was plotted for Haslam. So here we have plotted delta V0, delta V1, and delta V2. as a function of threshold for two different LCUTs, so two different scales. So we find that the Haslam, WMAP, and Planck, they are not matching with each other within the 1 sigma error bar. So so this is evident for all the three scalar Minkowski functional at all scales. So it is understood that so far I've seen in the literature that the power spectrum, at the power spectrum level, these three maps should match. But if you go beyond the power spectrum and if we do morphological statistics like this, we find that there is a mismatch beyond 1 sigma. So this could be either because of the, as I've told, because of the features that is particular to the frequency band, or it could be because of the difference in the component separation technique used and how well they can reproduce the Haslam result. Okay, so another important thing that I would like to highlight here is that the shape of WMAP and Planck for delta V0, delta V1, and delta V2, they are similar to that of Haslam. So this again indicates that the WMAP and Planck synchrotron maps, they also contain the non-Gaussianity, which is of kurtosis type. Also, one point that I would like to highlight is that, as we have seen earlier, if you go from LCUT 50 to LCUT 90, that is like going to even more smaller scales, we found that the delta VK for Haslam, it falls, which means that the field is getting more Gaussian. But here for Planck, we are finding it ulta. So we can see that the amplitude of this blue, which is Planck, it is 0.11 for LCUT 50. But if you go to LCUT 90, it is getting increasing. So this is something that it's a feature that we are finding, which is different from that what we have seen in Haslam, which is again surprising. So once we have completed our analysis of this, so we have included the recent beyond Planck synchrotron map also. So the black one denotes the beyond Planck result. So in the beyond Planck synchrotron maps, so the result that we are finding is that so the delta V0 for LCUT 50, the beyond Planck delta V0 is decreasing from the Planck 2018 result, and it is getting more close to the Haslam result for this particular case. But for delta V1 and delta V2 at these two scales, they are similar to what we have seen for Planck. However, if you go to even smaller scales at LCUT equal to 90, we are finding that in all the three cases, the delta V0, delta V1, and the delta V2 values for beyond Planck, it is getting decreased and it is getting more close to the Haslam result that we have seen. So I would like to remind you that the V0, which is one of the scalar Minkowski functional area fraction, it basically contains information about the field. It basically counts the pixels in the field at various threshold. However, the V1 and V2, the contour length and the genus, it contains the information about the first and second derivatives of the field. So while comparing these three results, it will be useful to keep in mind the distinction between V0, V1, and V2. So it could be that at the field level, it is matching, but if you go to higher derivatives of the field, it is not matching. Okay, so finally, we have computed the alpha statistic for all the three maps, Haslam, WMAP, and Planck, at these two particular scales. And we find that the alpha for Planck is deviating a lot from the Gaussian isotropic simulation comparing to the Haslam. So this is evident at both LCUT 50 and LCUT 90. So since it's an ongoing work, we have to understand it in detail, why it is deviating more and why it is not able to reproduce, why it is not able to get back the Haslam result, whether some interesting physics is there or whether it has something to do with the component separation. Also, we have computed the two Betti numbers and the beta for individual structures, so the connected region and whole. And we find that there is also difference between three different maps. So I haven't shown the Gaussian isotropic simulation here, and we are still looking forward to understand the differences in Betti numbers and beta. One point I would like to highlight here is that the beta values for all the synchrotron maps, it is coming to be less than 0.4. So this is something interesting to point out, in the sense that for a CMP Gaussian field, the beta values computed comes around, even for temperature and polarization, it comes around 0.6. So here the values are coming to be less than 0.5, around 0.3, 0.2. So basically the beta measure the filamentary nature of the field, and since the synchrotron fields are highly filamentary, so this could be an indication of the filamentary nature of the field. So with all these results, I would like to go to the summary. So we find that the level of non-Gaussianity decreases as more high emission regions are masked and towards small scales in the Haslam map. However, at the Haslam resolution, the level of non-Gaussianity is not low enough to model as a Gaussian field. So we found that there is a 3.3 sigma significance for non-Gaussianity. Also, we find that the leading source of non-Gaussianity is the kurtosis term, with the skewness being subdominant. Moreover, in the cooler regions, the non-Gaussian deviation agrees well with the analytical expressions, keeping up to the kurtosis system. So, which is going to be which is going to be useful for modeling the synchrotron solution. Moreover, as the high emitting regions are masked and at small scales, we find that Haslam field is increasingly isotropic. Now, coming to the WMAP and Planck analysis, we find that Planck and WMAP map exhibit the same kurtosis type non-Gaussianity. However, both Planck and WMAP are very different morphologically from the Haslam map, with Planck differing more than WMAP. So the work is still ongoing, and we would like to understand what is causing this difference, and we hope that this will give us more interesting features about the synchrotron emission, which can be used to improve the component separation pipelines. Okay, so the planned extension is that we would like to scan other synchrotron surveys in synchrotron intensity and polarization, which can be used to cover different frequencies and scales. Also, we would like to explore the dust intensity and polarization maps using these morphological tools, and we would like to relate it to the magnetic field studies of our galaxy. Also, we would like to incorporate the lessons learned from the morphological analysis of various galactic components in CMP component separation algorithms. So let me all thank you for listening, and I would like to take questions if there is any.